In this episode with Cameron Turner, we find out a bit more about himself, his own background. We get some insights into the Lean and Six Sigma methodologies. We hear some brilliant and interesting client stories from his experience and the importance of how people are at the heart of everything. He gives us an insight into Roboyo's capabilities in process and task mining and also some key trends for the future. I hope you all enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of All Access Automation. My name is Niall Hannigan and I am your host today, and I'm delighted to be joined by Cameron Turner, who is the Global Lead of Process Excellence and Discovery. Cameron, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Of course, no problem. How are you getting on? All good?
Yeah, all good. Busy.
Yeah. That's the best way to be.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. And how was your journey up this morning? We're up in today.
Yeah, from where I live, this isn't the most convenient location to get to, but we got there.
Okay, good stuff. Glad to hear. And you were on holiday recently, were you?
Yeah, I just got back from 10 days in Thailand.
Very good. How you been before?
I'd been once before, but I hadn't been with excuse me, I hadn't been with my family. So there were three families. We had this big villa, and so there's like 10 kids and 6 adults. But actually, it was really relaxing. It was the most relaxing holiday I've had since I've had children. So I think my honeymoon was the last one. This one was something like 12 years. I haven't had a relaxing holiday, but I think it was so good because all the kids got on great.
Okay.
And they all had each other to...
Nothing to worry about, yeah.
They all had each other to play with and interact with. And so their demand on us as adults was almost non-existent.
Okay.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, any squabbles or
nothing.
They were all solved
I don't think I yelled. I didn't yell at my children once.
You saved it off for
Roboyo. It's a new record.
Yeah. Very good. I'm glad to hear anyway. Now you're back revitalized. I love it. So I suppose, Cameron, just to kind of kick it off, just give me a bit of an idea about yourself and your background.
Right. So you probably still hear it in my accent. I'm not originally from England. I'm an Aussie. I came over in 2006. So I grew up in Australia. I had my first corporate job in, I think, 98 in a call center for a bank.
Okay.
Handling very, very angry inquiries from credit card holders, current account holders. And that was my first real introduction to what corporate life is all about.
Yeah.
And it was a great proving ground because dealing on the front line with angry customers,
of course,
how to deal with that, and all the systems were terrible because this is back in the 90s. We didn't even have email.
Okay.
The company had email, but us low.
Oh no, you would never get email. Yeah.
Never permitted to have it. And we had terminals rather than computers, right?
Right.
They're pretty locked down.
Okay.
And didn't allow you to do much. And it was really rigorous. But it gave me a really good grounding in what frontline work is all about. And I did that for a few years. And then I became a team manager. That was interesting. It was also a big learning experience.
When you say interesting,
well, people are, particularly in sort of low paid, low skilled jobs like that.
Yeah,
people can be a challenge.
Okay,
and learning how to deal with that was because you get no training, right? I don't think anything's changed. You just you're a manager now, and I was must have been in my early 20s, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Of course, yeah.
But that's fine. But you learn on the job.
Yeah.
And then I was made manager of a workforce planning team. We did planning for 4 call centers and 2 admin centers around on the sort of eastern side of Australia.
Yeah.
And that team didn't really work very well, and so I spent a year fixing all the problems that I could see with the way that was going.
Okay.
And my reward for that was that they hired someone to replace me.
Lovely.
And didn't tell me. So they just oh, we've hired this new guy. And I'm looking at, they're telling me about him and looking at his CV, and he's got like 10 years experience as leading workforce planning. And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy is clearly more experienced
Yeah.
than me. I've just worked my guts out for a year to fix all these problems,
Hmm.
and I thought I'd done a pretty good job. So it was a bit of a slap in the face. And my boss was, I was based in Melbourne. My boss was based in Sydney, and he came down and said, let's go out to lunch. And I had my resignation letter in my pocket because I was
Right.
just
Okay.
furious.
Yeah.
And just waiting for the right moment to slap it on the table and say, I quit. How dare you, sir? And anyway, he starts talking, and he said, you might have noticed that we've hired this new person. I said, yeah, I did notice.
Yeah.
Ready to go. And he said, and the reason we've done that is because I want them to take over. And I'm like, yes, I got that.
Yeah.
He said, because I want to give you a different role. And he said that I think your skill is not leading workforce planning, although you've done a perfectly good job of it.
Yeah.
I think your skill is actually fixing things and fixing problems. So I want to give you a bunch of training in how to fix stuff. And then I'm going to create a job for you, which is like an internal consultant where your only job is to go around and fix things.
Okay.
I thought, oh, that sounds all right.
Yeah. Just rip that out. Yeah.
My resignation letter back in my pocket. And that was really the start of my career properly.
Okay.
So it wasn't a great design. I didn't study business at uni and then become a graduate at a consulting firm, which is a common way to move into consulting. This was my start, and I didn't even know this was a job really.
Hmm.
And the next couple of years, that was what I did. I just went around fixing stuff and had a bunch of training, and I was introduced to Lean and Six Sigma and all those concepts there. And I had a few other jobs after that in Australia, but I never lost that kind of continuous improvement focus. And then I decided that I was 28 and I'd never traveled, and I thought the next phase in my life will probably be, marriage and children and all that kind of stuff. So my window to go travel and see a bit of the world was I felt like probably closing a little bit.
Yeah.
So I left there on really good terms, and my mother is English, so I have
Okay.
a British passport, and traveled around Europe for 3 months as you do. And
You're not the first Aussie to do
not
that.
the
Like,
first to
yeah.
do
Yeah.
that. Probably not the last. And then I started working as a contract consultant,
Okay.
and I did that for a couple of years, and then for a few different consulting firms. And then I thought, you know what, I really love this work. I wouldn't mind seeing if I could actually create a consulting firm that just did this. And so that's what I did. And we rapidly got a few really, really good clients, really big blue chip, well-known name,
Hmm.
really long-term clients. One of our clients was Nationwide Building Society, and they were a customer of ours for 10 years.
Hmm.
And we grew to a team of about 20 people, and survived the pandemic, which was tough.
Yeah.
But we came through it, and we didn't have to make anyone redundant, and we didn't have to reduce anyone's salaries. So that was a big win for us. And then we had an amazing year in 2021 and 22. And then we became part of the Roboyo family in August of last year, 2020. It feels longer than that, but it's 7 months ago.
Yeah.
We became part of Roboyo.
Very
So
good.
that's my background.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there now,
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah. No, very good, very good. And I suppose when you kind of got the first insight to that internal consultant role and kind of fixing problems, like is that where kind of the passion, I suppose, and interest in Lean and Six Sigma principles kind of came from? Yeah.
100%. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great to kind of see a problem and then have a think about what you could do differently.
Yeah.
And then create a plan, deliver it, and implement it, and see that then happen, and the benefits that you thought that would give you happen. So the biggest thing I did in the planning area was we had a small team. I think it was about 4 or 5 of us, and we'd spend the majority of our time, or the team would spend the majority of their time, just creating reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Was easily, a good 70% of the workload.
Yeah.
And we were an outsourcer, so we had about, I don't know, 35, 40 clients. And we literally did the same thing for every one of these clients, but every one of them had a different report.
Right.
So
Okay.
all unique and special snowflakes.
Yeah.
And so we just spend all this time doing daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, quarterly reports for 35, 40 clients. And then we'd spend about maybe 20% of our time, 25% even, doing schedules. This is like creating all the rosters and the rotas and, making sure that we've got the right coverage of the right staff at the right time with the right skills, taking into account sickness and annual leave and all that kind of stuff, planning breaks. So that was about 20, 25% of the job. And then we'd spend maybe 5, 10%, whatever's left, doing forecasts.
Yeah.
Which is forecasting what we think the demand is going to be into the centers. And that just felt really wrong to me. It felt like kind of the most important bit is the bit we do the least of.
Yeah.
And the least important bit is what we do the most of. So it kind of felt really inverted.
Mm-hmm.
So I automated as much as I could, just using Excel. So we'd download reports off our telephony system, and then I would pass the information automatically into Excel, and I created a whole bunch of formulas that would aggregate everything up and calculate all the metrics that needed to be calculated. And then I worked on this was the hardest part. That part was easy because it's just functional, right? You just build it and it works.
Yep.
The hardest part was then convincing all the account managers that they should convince their clients to all have the same report.
Right. Okay.
So standardizing the reporting.
Yeah.
And that was super tricky because they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to go to a client. The clients had this for 10 years, and who are you to come in and change how we report? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to make it standardized and easy.
Yeah.
There's no detriment to what they're getting. It's just slightly different. And I guess what I found frustrating is when they didn't even want to have a conversation with the clients about it, because the perception is anything that you would say that was perceived as negative was to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah.
This is a partnership. It's okay to go back to a client and say, would you be okay with this? Here's why we want to do it. And of course, everyone eventually did. It just took 6 months of unnecessary time and effort and meetings and cajoling, and mainly not with the clients. They were actually pretty good about it. It was our internal staff that were really blocking it. And I guess I didn't expect to have that kind of resistance to change.
Yeah.
And of course, what did I know? This is the first time I'm ever doing this, right?
Yeah.
I've since learned over my 20 years of doing this that resistance to change is like one of the major things that you have to overcome.
Yeah.
And it's prevalent everywhere, and it comes from where you least expect it sometimes. So yeah, that was all about just inverting the kind of the pyramid of what we did. So we spent much more time on forecasting, much more time on scheduling, and very little time, like 5 or 10 minutes a day tops, on reporting in the end. So it was a big win.
And I suppose we'll get into some of the more client stuff as well later on. I'm sure you have a few stories over your experience, over your tenure. But just to kind of dive into a bit in terms of the lean side of things, and we can talk about Six Sigma as well, just of its origin, and I suppose in layman terms what it actually means and what it means for companies.
Yeah, it just means continuous improvement. That's all it really is. We love packaging things up and putting a brand name and a wrapper around it and calling it something else, but that's all it is. And lean and Six Sigma are actually two separate things.
Yeah.
But if you were to Venn chart them, the Venn diagram shows a huge overlap, and so I think people recognize that. And over time, I mean, when I first started, there were people who would go, "I'm a Six Sigma consultant." They
Right.
wouldn't even have the word lean. And then I met lean consultants. And then over time, the two just merged, and you'd really struggle to find someone now who identifies as one or the other only. Almost everybody, I mean, I'm sure they exist, but I've never seen, in the hundreds and hundreds of consultants I've interacted with, they all call themselves Lean Six Sigma consultants, but they are two separate things. So lean comes to us by way of the term lean comes to us by way of a book called The Machine That Changed the World. And it was a study done by a British and an American professor of the automotive industry, and how Toyota had a very different approach to how they did their work and how they managed the work and their culture the biggest thing was the culture was different. And they identified all of these things and they called it a lean system. And that's kind of when the term started to get traction. But of course, but Toyota had been doing a version of that for decades, the Toyota production system. But it really came to prominence, I guess, in the 90s, thanks to these two professors, Womack and Jones, and then it's sort of grown massively off the back of that. Six Sigma was a really statistical approach to doing the same thing, and it was born out of Motorola in the 80s. And Six Sigma is actually a mathematical term itself. It refers to the amount of, achieving a Six Sigma level of quality meant that you would have something like 3.4 defects per million opportunities to make a mistake.
Okay.
So, imagine that was your error rate. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So it was something to be aimed for. And Lean and Six Sigma together just either overlap. They have some of the same things. So some of the root cause analysis stuff is just identical, or they're complementary. And someone once explained to me like this. So Lean is kind of wide and narrow. So Lean looks at like all of your processes and organizational setup across the piece, but doesn't go super deep in any of them.
Yeah.
And Six Sigma goes, narrow and deep. So you'll drill down on a specific little bit of a process and measure it 6 weeks from Sunday and things like that. So as a methodology, they complement each other really well.
Okay.
So that's where they come from. But all we're talking about, if anyone ever says Lean Six Sigma, all they mean is just continuous improvement or process improvement.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And I suppose now coming into the Roboyo family and kind of adding in those more automation technologies as well, how's that kind of developed those kind of areas of expertise and helped you in terms of working with clients?
Yeah, so we already did a little bit of automation prior to joining Roboyo. So at my former company, Lean Consulting, we did some RPA and we did a little bit of BPM. But you guys, we at Roboyo do it a lot more, right?
Yeah.
So the skills and knowledge and expertise in RPA is nothing compared to what we had. You guys Roboyo is amazing at it. Same with BPM, a lot more capability. So a lot more use cases, a lot more client examples, a lot more success stories, and a lot more technical capability. So that's brilliant. That's been really helpful. Then there's new technologies like, new to me, things like intelligent document processing and conversational AI, which has been great to learn about. And I'm also responsible at Roboyo for all of our process and task mining capability. And that's a really good fit with Lean Six Sigma, because these tools, unlike the rest of the automation tools that we have at Roboyo, they all deliver an outcome, a business process outcome.
Yep.
So if you automate something with RPA, now something you don't have to do manually, or if you use intelligent document processing, now it's reading and understanding and ingesting information that otherwise a person would have had to do. Same conversational AI. So all of these things actually execute on the business process. Process mining and task mining tools don't. They are just insight tools. So what they do is they allow us to understand quite rapidly everything that's going on in terms of a process. And that's the starting point for Lean. So when we go and do some Lean work in an organization, the first thing we do is, well, let's understand how these processes work. And the way we do that is through observation. In Lean, it's got a Japanese term because comes from Japan through Toyota, and they say Gemba. But really, it's about going and observing the work and seeing what it is people do. So we don't do Lean on the basis of what a process map might say, because that's a very pretty process map you've got over there. But what really happens, or what's the detail hidden inside these boxes? So you go and watch it, you go and see what's going on, and you learn so much about the process, and you see all the failure and you see all the waste. Process mining tools accelerate that really rapidly. Now, they can also do a little bit of execution. So Salonis has things like action flows, but broadly, that's not what they're there for. They're there to just provide insight. And that insight is invaluable if you're going to then do some Lean Six Sigma process improvement. So the connection between those process mining tools and operational excellence and Lean Six Sigma is really strong, and it's a good fit.
Yeah, it's a powerful combination.
Yeah.
From your experience with clients, what are some of the, I suppose, your favorite use cases, or maybe some of the more interesting ones as well that you've had experience with, either in Australia, in the UK, wherever it's taken you?
Yeah, there's been a lot. You get some real head scratching moments where
That's what you want, though.
sometimes it's so bad that like. So I'll tell you about one at a bank, and we worked with several banks, so I won't name it. But this process, people don't believe me when I tell this story. So what happened was I was doing a diagnostic in all the operational areas of this bank. I was going to see the document management side of things. So I'd arranged to go and sit with this person who was going to show me how they scan and index incoming paperwork. I'd already seen how they opened and sorted and all that sort of stuff. So now it's kind of like, how do we deal with the paperwork and how we scan it? And I'd planned to be there at 10 o'clock. So I sit down, come over and I say, hi, I'm Cameron. I'm here to, hopefully they've mentioned me. I'm here to observe the process. And she goes, she's a lovely lady. She goes, yeah, no worries at all. Do you mind if I just finish this task first? Because I've been asked to complete it. I know you're here to see that, but do you mind if I'll do it later. And I said, no, please. I don't like to put issues on the front line. It's like, you just do what you normally do, right?
Yeah.
So I said to her, no, you crack on with what you're doing. So she's got this stack of envelopes in front of her, maybe about 20 of them. And she opens up an envelope and she tips out its contents. And inside was cut up pieces of credit and debit cards. And then she starts to, like a jigsaw puzzle, crazy jigsaw puzzle. She starts to piece these pieces together, these fragments of cards. And then she reforms the card, and then she's got a spreadsheet open on her screen, and she keys in the card number, and she keys in the name, and she keys in the sort code and account number if it's a debit card, and the expiry date, and if she can get it, the little code on the back. And then she scooped up her these little bits, and she put them back in the envelope, and she put that envelope aside, and she grabbed the next one. She does the same thing again.
Yeah.
And so by about the third one, I said, can I just ask you, what are you doing? And she said, oh yeah, of course. So these are secure items that are being returned to us. And I said, right. And so I am logging them on the secure item return log, because it's very sensitive customer information here. We need to make sure it's all very secure. Right. And then I said, so what do you do next? She goes, well, I take these all up to I think some sort of financial compliance area, and I leave the tray there, and I save the spreadsheet. And I said, okay. I'm writing some notes down, so find out where these things go. And then I said to her, so, but why are you doing it? And she goes, because it's the process. That's what we do. They've been sent to us. And I said, who do you bank with? And she said, I bank with Lloyd's. This was not Lloyd's. She goes, I bank with Lloyd's. And I've gone, oh, right, okay. Have you ever returned the cut up pieces of your credit card or debit card to Lloyd's? And she stops for a moment. She goes, I don't think I ever have.
Yeah.
And I've gone, yeah, no, me. I've never returned little bits. Why have these customers returned it to us? And she said, oh, we asked them to. I said, what do you mean we asked them to? So then she goes and gets a letter, and she shows me that when the new card's issued, it has another piece of paper with it that says, it has a little picture, a little diagram of the correct way to cut up the card, and a prepaid return envelope And it says, black and white, there it is. Please return your cut up card to us.
Yeah.
And I said, so why do we do that? She goes, oh, I've never really thought about it. This is just part of my job.
Yeah.
And I followed it through. Finance, they get this crate with all these envelopes and cards in it, and they chuck it straight in the bin.
Right.
And when I asked them about the secure item spreadsheet, their answer was the what? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
So
Okay.
here's a process that is just like head scratchingly dumb, right? So you look at it and you think, I can't believe we do this. Anyway, when I went to the director and the senior leadership team, and I was playing back, and some of the things that we'd found, and I got to this one, and none of them believed me.
No way.
No, they were like, we don't do that. And then what do you say? Because I'm like, I sat in your operation for an hour watching them do it. Like, I know you do it.
Yeah.
I just saw it. I didn't think to tape it. I didn't think I'd be questioned. All right, come on then. So I took them down. And the next day, actually, I said, well, I'll arrange a time. And I took them down, and I showed them that. And they were like, I can't believe we do this. And so when you try and trace back why this occurs, it's really hard because it's so old. No one really knows. The best we could kind of figure was that when credit cards first and debit cards first came out, in, I don't know, was it 70s or 80s when we started getting these and moving away from
I can't help you there, and apologies.
And I think it was just someone said, oh, we should get these we should get these back just to make sure that they're not these cards circulating out there or trying to be reused by anything. It was a fraud measure probably.
Yeah, of course.
And then no one has ever revisited it. So for like 40 years, 50 years maybe, this has just been the process. And most customers don't do it. Most customers just bin it.
Yeah.
But there are a few who are like, oh, you've asked me to. Well,
fair enough.
If you want the little bits of plastic, you can have them.
Yeah.
And so they do that. So you kind of like, you see some processes like that where it's just head scratching, where you're like, what on earth is this doing? And nobody knows about it, or nobody in sort of leadership.
Of course, yeah.
In fact, they don't even believe that it's happening.
That it's done. Yeah.
Or there's another one in a bank where they were doing an affordability check on customers who were in hardships. So customers will call in and say, and most banks offer this, if you don't know, where you can change your mortgage from being a repayment mortgage to being an interest-only mortgage. And the effect of that is you stop paying down the capital that you've borrowed. You're just paying the interest, but the repayment is a lot lower. So if your mortgage repayment was, I don't know, two grand a month, and you've just been made unemployed, and you think, I don't know how I'm going to cope with that, and you're going through a bit of hardship, you might say to the bank, look, can I switch to an interest-only loan? Maybe you only do it for 6 months, and your loan repayment goes down to, I don't know, 1,200 quid. And so that 800 quid a month makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So this is the context by which people are doing this. And that's pretty much the only reason you do it. No one switches between repayment and interest only just for funsies, right?
Yeah.
You only do it for a hardship purpose. And again, someone in compliance had said, oh, we'll need to assess their affordability. And I'm like, yeah, but they're telling you they can't afford it. Like that's the whole reason for this process.
Yeah.
I say, oh no, it's the regulations, we have to do it. And so we ask them for all this information, which then we get, and then we key in to an Excel spreadsheet. Brilliant process. They're keying it into this spreadsheet that they've got. And then this spreadsheet comes up with an answer. It either says green, yes, or it says red, no.
Okay.
You see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
We already know they're in hardship. So I sat and watching every single one without fail is coming up red, going, no, they cannot afford to do this.
Yeah.
And then the person goes and does it anyway. So it's like, no matter what the outcome of that compliance check and affordability check was, we would still do it. And I said, I can't help but notice watching that every one of these calculators is saying, no, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And then you're doing it anyway. What, can you talk me through that? And he's like, well, yeah, of course we're doing it. I mean, they're in hardship. So of course we're going to give it to them.
Yeah.
So if that's the answer, if the answer is, of course we're going to, why are you checking?
Of course. Yeah.
And like, oh, because, we've been told to. We have to. It's part of the process. And that one was really interesting because I thought, again, that'd be a no-brainer. But getting that stopped was really, really tricky
Okay.
because compliance dug their heels in. It's like, no, it's the rules, the law. You absolutely
Yeah.
have to do
Back
it.
to the
on a risk
resistance
check.
again. Yeah.
And you're kind of like, but come and watch the process with me, because you'll see, I think, that it doesn't make any sense to do it in this context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just banks you deal with, no.
No, not just banks. They're just some of the more memorable ones, but we've seen all sorts of ones. So, you know, at a water company, they were scratching their head around why they were getting such poor customer satisfaction survey results.
Mm-hmm.
And how it was set up. It was actually implemented by IT. At any point in the process, a random survey could go out. So if this was a leakage process. So, you know, you call up because you've got all this water pooling out the front of your house. So you call up the water company and say, I think I've got a leak. And they go, yeah, right you are. Thanks. We'll send out an engineer. So they send someone out and they go, yep, that's a leak. Oh, no, they do more than that. They go, they look for where the leak could be coming from. They've got a can of spray paint. They might, you know, they want to be able to detect where the leak's coming from.
Yeah.
And then they'll go, yeah, found a leak. And then it moves on to the next phase, and you know, the crew will go out and they'll dig a hole, and then they'll replace the pipe, and then another crew will go out and they'll fill the hole, because that's a whole science of different grades of rubble and stuff that you put in, and then seal it, make it good, and then another crew will come out and jet wash and clean it all up. So,
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a whole process, and every time one of those teams finishes, it may or may not trigger a survey.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, if it triggers after the first person, the engineer who's come out and gone, yep, that's a leak, you'll then get a survey. Now, often you won't even be home when the engineers come. Right?
Yeah.
So you've called up in the morning and reported a leak. Engineers come the next day while you're at work and go, there's a leak there, and spray painted and updated his system saying, yeah, we need a crew out here. And then when he hits done, you get a survey going, how was our service?
Yeah.
And you're like, I've still got a giant leak.
Yeah.
Zero. You know, and so I got about 1,000 records of these surveys, and I filtered on all the zeros. Like, if they're struggling to understand why, I might read some of the verbatims and see what it is people are saying. And every one of them is like,
same.
you haven't done anything.
Yeah.
I've still got a leak. I don't understand why you're asking me how your service was. There's a giant hole in my, you know, or you've dug the hole, but you haven't filled it in yet.
Yeah.
So you fixed the leak, but there's a gaping hole in my driveway or in front of my road. And so it's kind of like, I can understand the intentions. You can see how someone would design a survey like that.
Of course.
Like, we want to know at every stage. We want to know how we're doing.
Feedback. Yeah.
But no one had really thought of it from the customer's perspective, which is no customer's going to go, yeah, delighted with the giant hole now I've got in my driveway. Good work.
Yeah.
Go. Or off the first one where I don't even know that you've come. And so from my perspective, nothing has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I've called you yesterday and literally nothing has happened.
Yeah.
And now you're asking me
how
good you are.
Yeah.
So and so you just kind of you feed that back, and you're like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have structured it like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, maybe that's not the best way. So, you know, there's lots of things, but it was clear that no one had read these comments as well. I reckon I was the first person to sit there and read all of these comments,
right?
Probably ever.
Yeah.
And I love reading the verbatims off customer surveys.
Yeah.
That's where all the gold is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you get some funny ones where people are just really annoyed.
Yeah.
But often people will tell you why they're annoyed.
Yeah.
Most people go, I'm really mad at you because X.
Yeah.
And it's a huge source of feedback.
Yeah.
I always like to try and read them when we go in.
Yeah, you seem quite entertained by it as well. Like, yeah. It's back to your roots of the call center as well. Like, so.
Yeah. No, right? You want to know how to make this process better? Or find out from the people that like interact with the process every day. It's the best way. Yeah.
In terms of actually the project and setting it up and getting involved in the project, you mentioned that you kind of do the initial diagnostic. Once that happens, then what happens in terms of your methodology and your approach?
Yeah, so a client will call us up and say, you know we've got some problems with our processes, but we don't know where to start. We don't know where we should be focusing our time. We don't know the extent of the problems. We don't know the specifics of the problems. We just know that our processes aren't great.
Yeah.
What would it cost to sort of help us fix it all? And it's like, well, I don't know. I just make up a number now.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do a diagnostic first. That will give us a lot of information around your biggest problems and the biggest opportunities and the ROI and all that. And then we can come back to you with a plan. And clients at that point, after the diagnostic, clients can go one of two ways. They can either go, thanks for that. That was really, really insightful. We're going to have a crack at doing it ourselves,
Yeah.
which is cool. Or they'll go, yeah, that was brilliant. Well, there's no way we're going to be able to do this on our own. Can you help us?
Yeah.
And that help might look different depending on the client. Some want less help from us and really do more of the heavy lifting themselves. Other clients want us to do a lot of the heavy lifting and less because they're just time poor or really busy or don't have the right skills. So it can look different every time, really. There's no one size fits all. It's a dialogue with the customer to try and figure out what they're looking for and what their needs are, to help them get to where they want to be. But once you mobilize it, we typically use broadly use like a domain kind of framework where we define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. You want to be by this stage, the diagnostic has already told us where most of the problems are and given us a view of what the ROI could be if it's fixed. So now you need to start thinking, well, what is that fix going to be? Because almost in every case, there's not one way you can go about it.
Yeah.
So should we use a system integration here? Should we use a bit of RPA there? Should we just stop doing this process altogether? Should we amalgamate these two process steps? Should we stop doing that process step all there? So you need to start thinking about what it is we're going to do differently and designing that.
And how does that happen? Is it a lot of input with the client in terms of observation, or is it interviews, or is it, based off maybe the Six Sigma?
Yeah, this is where workshops are much more useful, right? Yeah. So we already have done a lot of the observation, so we already know how it's working. So now it's kind of you do some root cause analysis, you get some measures in. Sometimes the problem is in this team over here, got nothing to do with this. And they're not even in scope for the work, but you need to go to them and say, look, we need you to change what you're doing over here because it's having a knock-on effect down here. So, we'll workshop it. We'll try and get as many stakeholders around. I like to go and speak to stakeholders prior to those workshops to understand where they're coming from. So you might get some compliance people in the room. You might get some marketing people or customer experience people. You might have some IC people. You've got some SMEs from the business who know the process really well.
Yeah.
And you try and bring everyone together and agree on a way forward. And that's probably the hardest thing about the job is when I started doing it, I was surprised at the amount of resistance that you get from things that you don't expect to get it from.
Right.
I remember we were sending out multiple regulatory notices to clients. These were a regulatory notice that you have to send to every person in the UK that has a savings account. And that's the wording on regulations is kind of grey on purpose, I think, because they want you to kind of interpret it. They don't want to be really prescriptive with regulatory bodies. And someone in compliance had interpreted that to mean for every account, you need to send this notice. Okay. So if you have 5 accounts with us, you're getting this notice 5 times.
Yeah.
And we sent it in with like a statement. So, you on 5 separate occasions, you'd get this notice. And I was working on a paperless program to try and reduce the amount of paper, which was very successful. We managed to reduce the cost of it by about 4 million to a huge volumes. So there was 2 angles to that. We had to drive digital adoption further and put more documentation and make more documentation available digitally, because some weren't at all. And then it was like also looking at the nature of the documents. And so one of them was this regulatory notice. And we're like, how come we're sending, I can't remember the numbers now, but like, how come we're sending 60 million of these and we only have 20 million customers? It doesn't make sense. And it was because of this duplicate issue. And I thought it would be fine. I thought it's a no-brainer. It doesn't say you have to send it for every account. Nowhere does it say that. I read the regulations. I thought this is an oversight. This will be easy to get through.
Yeah.
And the amount of resistance that I got from compliance on it.
And is that fear, or is it fear of, like, what is that?
Well, I think it comes at
Because it's a consistent, seems to be
it happens all the time. I think what you get is you get people who have diametrically opposing incentives. And by that, I don't mean like incentives like bonuses. I mean incentive for doing a good job. So in ops, you've got your incentives are do it accurately, do it fast, and do it as low cost as possible, particularly as you go up the management tree. That's what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
In compliance, they have none of that. They're not an operational function. They have one metric, which is don't get a giant fine from the regulator, or don't get sued, or So my metric is, if the regulator doesn't like what we've done and issues us a giant fine, finds us, in breach of regulations and issues us with a massive fine, not only is that reputational damage for the organization, but we also get a giant, 7, 8, 9-figure fine.
Yeah.
So under no circumstances are you allowed for that to happen. So if I'm sitting over here in compliance, it's in my, there's no benefit to me to try and make it,
of course,
streamlined.
Yeah.
But there is benefit in me to try and make it as bulletproof as possible.
Yeah.
So I will over-engineer. I'm happy to over-engineer the regulatory components of this process.
Yeah.
Just to make my bulletproof, watertight. No chance that this will ever come back on me as a decision I made that we got in trouble for.
Yeah.
Now, ops, on the other hand, they're not in charge of the regulatory response, and they're constantly getting pressure for reduced costs, do it faster, do it quicker, do it better. And so you've got these two opposing kind of forces at work.
Yeah.
And the same with IT. It's not just compliance. I mean, any area you can talk to and find resistance where you weren't expecting it. So, your solution design something, you got a great solution, it's really cheap to do, it's going to have massive benefits, and you go like RPA and you go and pitch it, and IT are like, nah, don't want to do it. So why? Oh, it's not proper automation. It's not the right way. We want to do a proper, API for that process, and we're going to build this whole thing, and we're going to system integrate it, and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that's all great.
Yeah.
But that's all way more expensive than the benefit you get from it. And so will never happen. And so you kind of get these oppositional views sometimes where you don't expect it. So before the workshops happen, I like to go and speak to people and say, tell me what you think about this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is important about the process? What's the most important thing to you about how we do this process? Are you happy with the way it works? Tell me how this works for you. And that way you can start to uncover these things beforehand, and you can start to lay a bit of groundwork and start to talk to people around why there might be a different approach, and talk to IT about how you're right, that is the better way to do it, but we're not going to get the budget for that, and Simon, you start talking it through, and you start to show them what your thoughts are, and you include them in the solution design. How do you think we should do this? So powerful to engage people, and people love sharing what they think about stuff like that. So getting people to be bought into the process by asking them to buy into the process sounds really obvious, but doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And if you want a car crash, then don't do any pre-work. Just invite everyone to a workshop and say, right, I'm going to do it this way, and then watch everyone get pissed off.
Yeah. From all the examples you've spoken about, it all comes back to your relationship with people and how you're able to navigate that. Is that the most important skill?
100%.
Right.
Yeah. And not one that comes naturally to me.
I would never believe it.
I'm a data.
Well, that's the perfect combination, though. If you have both.
I love data. I love process, and that's how I sort of take the angle. And I guess I've had to really work on the skills that I just talked about then.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a classic kind of just get everyone in a room and tell them this is the way we're going to do it. Cause
right.
Like I've already done all the work. I've examined all the angles. I've just,
what's the problem?
This is fine. Yeah. You'll just agree. Thank you very much. Let's move on.
Yeah.
That's like how I'm wired.
Okay.
And that is the absolute worst thing you could do. I mean, I remember very early on in my career in the UK, actually, as my second contract that I'm on, and I'm in with a client, and they they're the head of contact centers, and I was just feeding back, blissfully unaware of this people stuff, and I was just going, yeah. So you've stopped measuring AHT. you really need to reinstate that again, because it's caused a massive spike in AHTs pretty much across the board, and average times have gone up everywhere where you've taken this away, and you need to absolutely measure it again. It's also, you need it for blah, blah, blah. And this stakeholder is just getting redder and redder.
Yeah.
And they've gone, and they got really angry, and they were, no, we won't be doing that. And I'm like, okay, because
You weren't expecting that. No.
why not? She goes, I took it away, and I did it because it's better for X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of like, yeah, but you have to measure it for capacity planning. You can't actually capacity plan without it. And then she's like, no, you don't, blah, blah. And she starts and she gets really angry. Like, she went red and she starts yelling and screaming. I had a colleague in the room with me who was just sitting there going, God, this, like, wow. She actually started yelling and screaming at me, and I'm just sitting there like, really, I didn't rise to it. I was really polite.
Yeah.
But the failure on my part was just to go in and no preparation, no laying the groundwork, no seeking to understand another person's point of view, and just saying, this is what I think, blah, 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 and why, and just assuming I'm right. And even if I am right, that's not the point.
Of course,
the point is that you seek to understand other people's point of view before you go and just tell them what they need to do.
Yeah.
So that was a steep learning curve for me.
Yeah. In your role now with Roboyo, in terms of leading up this department, what do you kind of do day to day? What's your what's your kind of vision, I suppose, for the role that you're in, and what's your main goals looking forward now?
Yeah, so the day to day is really variable. I tend to get asked to support various areas of the business with things to do with process excellence and process mining. So I spend a lot of time in meetings with our sales and delivery colleagues, helping them, either pitch something to a client or how we're going to deliver something to a client. I'll join in pitches. So I'm in fact, I'm traveling to Gothenburg tomorrow to go and see a client, which we're talking for the first time to about process excellence and process mining.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I quite like doing that. More often than not, it's joining on Teams or Zoom. But every now and again, if I'm the only one on the end of a screen and everyone else is face to
the
face,
dynamic's gone. Yeah.
I'd rather join
Yeah.
face to face as well. I've had to join a lot of sales calls in German, which has been interesting.
Yeah.
Because my German is schrecklich, so it's not very good. So I usually do my bit in English, and I try and follow on as much as I can.
Yeah.
I also meet with the various people in the organization globally who have lean and process mining backgrounds.
Okay.
And whilst they report to whatever region they're in, they kind of have a dotted line into the practice where we all help each other and help drive it forward. So, I think of my role as having three main aims, which is one, to help sell our service. So we our salespeople aren't experts in process mining or lean. Many of them have never even sold these things before, because they've just been selling RPA or BPM or whatever their specialism is. So it's new to them. So my job is to help enable that, and provide the materials for them. So the artifacts and the case studies and the pitch decks and all that kind of materials that go with selling. So that's helping sales, helping delivery. So the best way as a consulting firm to win business is to be excellent and get more business from the customer, because the customer wants to use you. That's so much easier than going out and getting a new logo or a brand new company. So repeat business is hugely important. And my philosophy on repeat business is, well, if you do a brilliant job, they'll want more. And then they pull on you rather than you pushing. So a project ends, you go, we really want to do this, and you're pushing a service on them. Sometimes works, but what works better is if you knock it out of the park. They love everything that you've done, and come back to you and say, what can you do? Can you do this next week? So can you do that next?
Totally different dynamic. Like
Totally different dynamic.
yeah.
And you get that from delivery excellence. So I want to make sure that whatever it is we're doing, whether it's some lean work, some process mining or task mining, that we're doing it as best we can. And not only that, but how you respond to mistakes, because mistakes happen and they're going to happen, and it's fine.
Great point. Yeah.
A lot of consulting firms take the it's your fault kind of approach. So if they do something wrong, they blame the client and try and push it back at the client, admit nothing, and make them feel bad, which I think is nuts. I think if you've made a mistake, in my experience, if you just go, I'm sorry, we made a mistake, here's what happened, here's what we're going to do about it, and here's how we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Clients are like, oh, okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Cool. We made a mistake at a huge client about 18 months ago, where we said something we shouldn't have said that was confidential, and it was one of my staff that said it, actually, and they were so petrified. They were like, I'm so sorry, I've made a huge mistake. And I said, no, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's my mistake, because I didn't tell you that was confidential information. How would you know? Like, how would you know you're not meant to share that unless I have explicitly told you, do not share this information with anyone? So I said, that's my fault. And so I got in front of the client and I said, this is my fault. I provided our consultant with some information. I didn't make it clear that was not widely disseminated in the organization, and it was highly confidential. They were under the impression that everyone had seen this.
Yeah.
So it was a really easy mistake to make, but it wasn't their mistake, it was mine. Here's what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to make sure, and let me speak to the people. We should make sure it doesn't happen again. Let me speak to the people that were affected by it, and apologize to them and give them some reassurance that blah, blah, blah. And did all of that, and they were fine. Never heard boo about it again. And then they ask us for more work at the end of it. So mistakes are sometimes an opportunity to show that you can do even better.
Yeah. And it humanizes it as well.
You shouldn't be afraid of mistakes.
Yeah.
Some of the best work comes out of a mistake that happened originally.
Yeah.
Mistakes, I think, are fine. We embrace mistakes rather than pretend they didn't happen and gloss over it and sweep it under the rug, or put blame somewhere else. Like, all these things that we do is so stupid. Just own it, just learn from it and do better.
Yeah. And it's the same with what you were saying, having the long-term vision for it. And it's all about the client relationship at the end of the day. So
absolutely,
there's going to be ups and downs.
So delivery is part of my job, so sales, delivery. And then the third strand is training and enablement. So that has two lenses to it, because we train as a service to clients. So there's external training we provide to our clients. There's also internal training that we provide to our consultants. So, if we've got a brilliant consultant who knows everything about hyper automation, has been consulting for 7 years and has been working on lots of projects to improve processes from an automation perspective, and they love that kind of stuff, it's like, well, you'd be perfect to train in Lean Six Sigma.
Yeah.
So how do we unlock that capability that is hidden at the moment, and give you more strings to your bow, and also create more capability internally for us? Or how do we take a great automation person and teach them about process mining? Or, so there's lots of opportunities. We're nearly 700 of us now, knocking on the door of that. So there's huge opportunity to drive more Lean Six Sigma knowledge and process mining knowledge throughout Roboyo.
Yeah.
That's the third thing I'm responsible for.
Very good. And just kind of piggybacking off that in terms of, sharing the knowledge that we have, where do you kind of see that area going in the industry in general, the trends for it in the future, and the kind of, I suppose, the possibilities of process mining or Six Sigma in the future, along with the automation that we have?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think there's probably much change happening to Lean Six Sigma.
People still have the same issues.
They do. I mean, Agile's come along. And Agile, I mean, I remember sitting in my first Agile training and thinking, the 90% of this training is lean.
I've done it. Yeah.
And you've just co-opted a whole bunch of lean.
It's a nice word, like
Kanbans and all this sort of stuff, and you're like, yeah, okay, there's a little bit that's new here, but mostly this is repackaging lean.
Okay.
And refocusing some of the activities specifically for software development. And I think Agile is perfect for that. I've seen some organizations try and take a broader view of Agile and roll that out to everything. And I don't really subscribe to that. I think it's a great, software development approach.
Yeah.
The nature of sprints, and minimum viable product and all that kind of stuff is perfect for that. So I don't see that becoming a bigger thing and taking over from Lean Six Sigma. I just, in my experience, I don't see that happening. I think Lean Six Sigma will probably continue to be the way it is, and maybe will evolve again over time, in the way it did in the last 20 years by combining Lean and Six Sigma.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it'd be more of the same. I think process mining tools and task mining tools are in their infancy.
Right.
I think there is a lot more value and benefit there that is yet to be unlocked. So the tools are great. I think Celonis is best in class for process mining. I think there's loads more they could be doing. And I think it's just it's a journey. So I think process mining tools that we have in the marketplace and task mining tools that we have in the marketplace today will look very different in 5 or 10 years time. And I think they'll have more prominence. And I think there'll be less, even in 5 years, I think you'll find process mining tools are where RPA was back in 2015.
Okay.
Right, where most companies didn't have it. And if you spoke about it to most companies, there was a lot of blank stares.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you about. And a few people had done it. So certainly in my experience, 2015, 2016, if I go into a client and say, do you have an RPA? They'd go, what's that? Now you barely find a company that doesn't have it.
Yeah.
If they didn't have it, they certainly know about it. You wouldn't get a blank stare.
Yeah.
But process mining is not in most companies still. And if you go into a company, you will quite often find some people have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think in the next 5 years, we'll see that adoption curve shift.
Okay.
Just like we saw with RPA.
Okay. And when you're presenting the key benefits or the vision for process mining, how do you kind of package that for a client?
I mean, I package it up as valuable insights. Like, it's mining is a good word for it, right? Because it is mining through all of the buried information that's hidden deep in the event logs and background of your systems, and unearthing that and kind of cleverly stitching it together and representing it in a way that makes sense, so that you can actually get a tremendous amount of insight into what is actually happening in your processes that you have no idea going on, or you might have a vague idea what's going on, but you have absolutely no way to quantify it or measure it or validate it in any way, shape, or form. So it's just a gut feeling.
Yeah.
And now you've kind of got all of this information it's completely quantifiable, and you can make decisions off it. You go, why do we do that? Why don't we do it like this? And it's, I think actually, I'll correct my previous answer. How do I think Lean Six Sigma will change? I think they'll start using more and more process and task mining tools.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because that's the most labor intensive bit of Lean Six Sigma is all of the insight.
Exactly. Finding out. Yeah.
That's going, seeing the work. It's very manual. If you can complement that, and even when we go and observe everything, getting data, my word, that's terrible. Getting data is one of the hardest parts. So you end up sampling stuff. You might watch 100 transactions and then base your financial model off that, or you might watch 10 and go, well, we do this 10,000 times. So I've seen 10 now. It's probably representative of the whole, hopefully.
Yeah.
So data is really hard to come by. So I think you'll find every lean person that I speak to who's seen process mining tools, they all go like this. They'll go, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the best. Can I have that?
It's just
When can
shaved
I
the
have
hardest
that?
bit off. Yeah.
That is so cool. Because it's like, it's
Yeah.
all the things that we struggle to get. So you combine that with observations and process mining tools. I think that's the way,
Yeah.
the big shift that will happen.
Yeah. Powerful combo is right. In terms of the company-wide perspective now, in terms of Roboyo, where do you want it to go, and where do you see it going, I suppose, in terms of this rapidly changing environment?
Well, I'd like to see process improvement and operational excellence kind of be embedded in everything that we do, because it should be. So it's almost kind of like a separate capability here at the moment. So we've got, RPA, IDP, conversational AI,
Yeah.
BPM, process mining, and lean. And I don't want it there. I want it here in the middle. I want it to be embedded in all of those competencies.
Mm-hmm.
It also needs to sit as its own thing, because customers will want to buy just that service from us. They'll want to have Lean Six Sigma training. But I'd love to get to a place where no matter what we're doing for a client, intelligent document processing, BPM, low code app development, conversational AI, RPA, doesn't matter what, that we are applying lean thinking and process improvement thinking the whole time, because I think it's a better proposition for our clients, where we're not just going and looking at this bit and going, yeah, we'll automate that bit for you. We're looking at actually, what else can
Your
we
journey.
do? Is that the right thing to do? Is that the best thing? Can we get more benefit by changing the way the process works first, and then actually delivering more automation? Or do we actually change that process completely so that you don't even need to automate it? I'd rather do that with a client and not do an automation, and that costs us business, because I think it's the right thing to do for the client, but actually the client will love it and want to give us more opportunities to do more. So, sometimes you do less to do more, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to see lean thinking and process improvement thinking kind of embedded in everything that we do as a service to clients. Clients are demanding that more and more, because clients are recognizing that the two go hand in glove. And if we're just doing something in isolation, it's not the best outcome. So I think it's a perfect alignment.
Brilliant. Well, look, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Cam, really appreciate your time. Cool. It was a great conversation, and
great to speak to you.
Looking forward to having you on for a few more client stories in the future.
Cheers, mate.